Picture this. A man spends 20 years away from home, 10 years fighting a war, and another 10 just trying to get back. But it's not the distance that's the problem. No, it's what he encounters along the way. Man-eating giants with a single eye in the middle of their foreheads who devour his crew 2 by 2. A sorceress who turns men into pigs with a flick of her wand. Half-woman, half-bird creatures whose songs lure you to certain death. And these are just some of the monsters that Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, faces on his journey home. Stick around until the end, because one of these creatures literally triggers the curse that transforms his journey from a few weeks into 10 years of hell. And spoiler alert, it's entirely his fault. Let's set the scene. We're around 1200 BC in what's known as the Bronze Age. The Trojan War has just ended. You know, that decade-long war fought over Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, kidnapped by the Trojan prince Paris. Odysseus, king of the tiny island of Ithaca, played a crucial role in the Greek victory. He's the genius behind the Trojan horse, that brilliant ruse where they pretended to offer a massive wooden horse as a peace gift to the Trojans, when in reality it was packed with Greek soldiers. The Trojans, trusting fools, wheeled the horse inside their city. That night, the soldiers emerged, opened the gates, and it was carnage. Troy fell. The war was over. Now, all Odysseus wants is to go home, reunite with his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus, who he hasn't seen since he was a baby. The normal journey should take a few weeks, max. But here's the thing. Odysseus is about to make one colossal mistake that will cost him 10 additional years of travel and the lives of every single one of his companions. Spoiler alert, it involves a Cyclops and way too much pride. The first real monster Odysseus encounters is Polyphemus, and we're not talking about your average monster. Polyphemus is a Cyclops, son of Poseidon, god of the seas. For those unfamiliar with Cyclopes, imagine an absolutely massive giant, tall as a mountain, with a single round eye in the middle of his forehead. The word Cyclops actually comes from the Greek kyklos, meaning circle, and ops, meaning eye, literally round eye. In mythology, there are several generations of Cyclopes. The first were divine smiths who worked for the gods, forging Zeus's lightning bolts. But Polyphemus and his brothers belong to a later, much more savage generation. These Cyclopes live in Sicily, near Mount Etna. They're shepherds, raising sheep, and, most importantly, they have zero respect for the sacred laws of hospitality that are fundamental in ancient Greece. Oh, and they eat human flesh. Odysseus and his men land on the Cyclopes island without really knowing where they are. They explore and stumble upon a gigantic cave. Inside, there's cheese, milk, provisions. Odysseus's companions want to grab some stuff and leave quickly, but Odysseus, driven by his curiosity and pride, absolutely wants to see who lives there. Bad idea. Polyphemus returns with his flock of sheep. He rolls an enormous boulder in front of the cave entrance, a rock so massive that 20 carts couldn't budge it. Then he spots the intruders, and without asking questions, without respecting the rules of hospitality, he grabs 2 of Odysseus's companions, smashes their skulls against the ground, and devours them raw. Homer spares us no detail. Brains and blood splatter, and Polyphemus tears the bodies limb from limb before eating everything, even the bones. Then he falls asleep, belly full. Odysseus wants to kill him in his sleep, but he realizes they'll never be able to move the boulder without the Cyclops' help. They're trapped. The next day, Polyphemus eats 2 more men for breakfast, then leaves with his sheep, sealing the cave behind him. During his absence, Odysseus and his men prepare a plan. They find a huge olive trunk that serves as the Cyclops' club, cut it down, polish it, and sharpen one end into a deadly point. That evening, Polyphemus returns and devours 2 more men. But this time, Odysseus approaches with wine, very strong wine he received as a gift earlier. He offers it to the Cyclops, who's never tasted anything so good. Polyphemus drinks more and more. He's so happy that he asks Odysseus his name, promising him a gift in return. And here, Odysseus answers, "My name is Nobody." The Cyclops, drunk, declares that his gift will be to eat nobody last. How generous. Then he collapses, completely wasted. This is the moment. Odysseus and his men heat the stake in the fire until it's red hot. Then, together, they plunge it directly into Polyphemus's single eye and twist it like a drill. Blood gushes out. The eye sizzles. The eyelids and eyebrows burn. Polyphemus screams in agony, a cry so terrible struggle, it wakes all the other Cyclopes in the area. They gather outside the cave and ask, "Polyphemus, who's hurting you?" And the Cyclops, now blind, responds, "Nobody. Nobody is killing me." The other Cyclopes think he's gone mad and leave. The next morning, Polyphemus, now blind, positions himself at the cave entrance and touches the back of each sheep as it exits to make sure no man escapes on their backs. But Odysseus has planned for everything. He ties his companions and himself under the bellies of the sheep. Polyphemus touches their backs, feels nothing, and lets them out. Odysseus escapes last, clinging under the belly of the largest ram, Polyphemus's favorite. They're free. They run to their ship and set sail. But here, Odysseus makes the mistake that will seal his fate. Once far enough from shore, instead of leaving in silence, he shouts to Polyphemus to mock him. Then, carried away by his pride, he reveals his true name.
"If anyone asks who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, sacker of cities, son of Laertes, resident of Ithaca."
Polyphemus, enraged, throws enormous rocks toward the ship that barely miss crushing them. Then, in a final act of vengeance, he prays to his father Poseidon. "Make it so Odysseus never returns home, and if he must return, let him arrive late, lose all his companions, and find misery upon his return." This prayer will be answered. Because of his pride, Odysseus has just drawn the wrath of a god. And if you want to know more about Cyclops, you may watch that video that appears in the upper right, where I explain their stories. By the way, if you love these mythology stories that mix action, monsters, and epic drama, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We've got tons of other fascinating tales coming up. After the incident with the Cyclops, Odysseus and his crew continue their journey, but the troubles are just beginning. They arrive on the island of Aea, where lives one of the most powerful sorceresses in all of Greek mythology, Circe. Circe isn't your ordinary witch. She's a full-fledged goddess, daughter of Helios, the sun himself, and Perse, an oceanid nymph. Her name comes from the Greek kyrke, which means hawk or bird of prey, quite revealing of her predatory nature. Homer describes her as polypharmakos, meaning expert in multiple drugs and poisons capable of operating transformations. Basically, she knows every plant, every potion, and knows exactly how to transform anyone into anything. She lives in an enormous palace in the middle of a clearing, surrounded by wild animals, wolves, lions, who strangely behave like domestic animals. Actually, they're not really animals. They're former men that Circe has transformed with her potions. They guard her palace, docile and enchanted. When Odysseus and his companions arrive, they decide to explore the island. Odysseus divides his crew into two groups. He stays at the ship and sends Eurylochus, his second in command, with 22 men to scout. They hear a beautiful voice singing in the palace. Drawn by this melodious voice, they approach. Circe welcomes them with a charming smile and offers them a hospitable drink, a mixture of barley porridge, honey, cheese, and Pramnian wine. Sounds delicious, but she's added poison. As soon as they've drunk, Circe strikes the ground with her magic wand and recites an incantation. Immediately, the men transform into pigs. Yes, into swine. They've kept their human minds. They're aware of what's happening to them, but they're trapped in pigs' bodies. Circe locks them in pigsties and gives them acorns to eat. Only Eurylochus escaped the fate. Suspicious, he had stayed outside and witnessed the whole scene. He runs to warn Odysseus, who immediately decides to go save his men. But on the way to the palace, he has a divine encounter. Hermes, the messenger of the gods, appears to him in the form of a handsome young man holding a golden staff. He gives him a magic herb called moly, a plant with black roots and white flowers that immunizes against Circe's spells. Hermes also gives him precise instructions. When Circe tries to transform him, Odysseus must draw his sword and threaten her. She'll then offer to share her bed, and Odysseus must demand that she swear by the Styx, the most sacred oath for the gods, that she won't harm him. Odysseus follows the plan to the letter. He arrives at Circe's, accepts the drink, but thanks to the moly, he remains immune. When she strikes with her wand, nothing happens. Stunned, Circe backs away. Odysseus draws his sword and threatens her. The sorceress, impressed and frightened, offers to share her bed. Odysseus accepts, but only after she swears by the Styx never to harm him or his companions again. Circe keeps her word. She transforms Odysseus's companions back into men, and better yet, she gives them a younger and stronger appearance than before. Odysseus and his crew stay on the island for an entire year. Yes, a year. Some versions say even longer. During this time, Circe and Odysseus have an affair from which several children are born, according to legends: Telegonus, Latinus, Agrius, and others. When Odysseus finally decides to leave, Circe doesn't hold him back. On the contrary, she helps him. She gives him crucial advice for the rest of his journey. She tells him he must first go to the underworld, consult the blind seer Tiresias, who can reveal how to return to Ithaca, and she warns him of the dangers that await: the Sirens, Charybdis, Scylla, and the island of the sun. Without Circe's advice, Odysseus and his men would never have survived what awaits them. After his visit to the underworld, where he meets the shades of dead heroes like Achilles and Agamemnon, Odysseus briefly returns to Circe, who reminds him of her instructions. Then he sets off again, and that's when he'll face one of the most famous and most deceptive creatures in all mythology: the Sirens. Contrary to what we imagine today with movies and tales, the Sirens of the Odyssey aren't women with fishtails. That image only appeared much later, in the Middle Ages, probably influenced by Nordic legends. No, Homer's Sirens are half-woman, half-bird creatures. They have the body of a bird with a woman's head and sometimes torso. Their name, Sirens in Greek, might come from the word seira, meaning rope or lasso, because they metaphorically catch sailors with their song, or from serios, evoking the burning midday heat, the most dangerous time at sea. Their origin varies depending on the version. Some say they're daughters of Achilles, a river god, and different muses like Calliope or Melpomene. Others tell that they were originally normal women, companions of Persephone, and that they were transformed into winged creatures as punishment for letting Hades kidnap Persephone without intervening. Another version says they challenged the muses to a singing contest and lost. The muses, victorious, demanded a crown made from their feathers, thus depriving them of their ability to fly. According to Homer, there are 2 Sirens, though a Greek scholium mentions 4, with names that reveal their power. Aglaopheme means one with brilliant reputation. Thelxiepia, one who mesmerizes with epic song. Pisinoe, the persuasive one, and Ligeia, the one with piercing cry. Other traditions count 3, each playing a different instrument. One, the lyre, another the flute, and the third, singing. They live on a rocky island, sitting in a flowery meadow that seems peaceful and beautiful. But when you get close, you discover the truth. All around them, the shore is littered with human bones and dried flesh. These are the remains of all the sailors who let themselves be seduced by their song and who died, hypnotized, unable to leave, listening until they died of hunger and thirst. Their song isn't just beautiful, it promises absolute knowledge. They say, "We know everything that happens on the nourishing earth." They promise to tell everything, all the secrets of the Trojan War, all the events of the world. It's this promise of universal knowledge that makes their song irresistible. Who wouldn't want to know everything? But it's a deadly trap. Once you start listening, you can never leave. Circe warned Odysseus. She explained that he must plug his companions' ears with wax so they hear nothing. But if Odysseus himself wants to hear the song, which no mortal has ever done and survived, he must have himself tied firmly to the ship's mast and order his men never to untie him, no matter what he says or begs. Odysseus follows these instructions to the letter. He takes wax, softens it in the sun, and fills all his companions' ears with it. Then he has himself tied to the mast with tight ropes. The ship approaches the Sirens' island. Suddenly, the wind drops. A strange calm settles over the sea, as if a god were lulling the waves to sleep. This is the moment the Sirens choose. They begin to sing. Their voice is clear, pure, mesmerizing. They recognize Odysseus and call him directly. "Come, illustrious Odysseus, glory of the Achaeans, stop your ship to hear our voices. No man has ever passed on his black vessel without listening to the honey songs that flow from our lips. All leave charmed and wiser." Odysseus is fascinated. He desperately wants to be freed. He orders his companions to untie him, but they can't hear him. They see his lips moving. They see his pleading face, and, following instructions, they tighten the ropes and row even faster. Odysseus struggles, screams, but nothing helps. The ship passes offshore from the island. When they're finally far enough and the song fades, the companions remove the wax from their ears and untie Odysseus. He's the only mortal to have heard the Sirens' song and survived. According to some versions of the legend, the Sirens, humiliated by their failure, throw themselves from the top of their rock into the sea and die, for an oracle had predicted they would perish if a ship managed to escape them. But the journey is far from over. Right after the Sirens, Odysseus must face an impossible choice between 2 terrifying monsters, Charybdis and Scylla. Charybdis isn't really a creature in the traditional sense. It's a kind of marine whirlpool, a gigantic vortex that sucks in seawater 3 times a day and violently spews it back out. Everything that passes nearby is engulfed. Ships, sailors, fish, everything. It's certain death. Even the gods avoid this place. On the other side of the strait, within bowshot, lives Scylla, and Scylla is a full-fledged monster. Once, she was a beautiful nymph, but Circe, jealous because the sea god Glaucus was in love with her, transformed her into an abomination. Now, Scylla has 6 heads at the end of long serpentine necks, each equipped with 3 rows of sharp teeth. She has 12 legs dangling from her misshapen body, and she lives in a cave on the cliff face. She never sleeps. When a ship passes, she plunges her 6 heads and grabs 6 sailors, 1 per head, tears them from the deck, and devours them alive. Circe warned Odysseus he can't avoid both. He must choose. Either he passes near Charybdis and risks losing the entire ship and all the men at once, or he passes near Scylla and sacrifices 6 men. It's a horrific choice, but Odysseus chooses Scylla. Better to lose 6 men than lose everything. They pass through the strait, rowing as fast as possible. Odysseus hasn't told his men anything to avoid frightening them. Suddenly, Scylla emerges. 6 of her heads plunge like serpents and snatch 6 of Odysseus's best companions. They scream his name while reaching their arms toward him as she pulls them up to her cave. Odysseus watches them, helpless. He'll later say it's the most horrible thing he's ever seen, but they survived. The ship passes through. Exhausted, they then arrive at Thrinacia, the island of the sun, where the sacred cattle and sheep of Helios graze. Tiresias and Circe both warned Odysseus, under no circumstances must he touch these animals. If he does, certain catastrophe awaits. Odysseus wants to continue, not to stop at this island, but his men are exhausted and beg him to rest. Reluctantly, Odysseus agrees, but he makes them swear not to touch any animal. They swear. For days, everything goes well, but then contrary winds block them on the island for an entire month. Provisions run out. The men are hungry. Odysseus goes off to pray to the gods to find a solution, and during his absence, Eurylochus convinces the others to sacrifice a few cattle. "We're going to die of hunger anyway," he says. "Might as well eat, and if the gods get angry, we prefer a quick death at sea to a slow death from starvation." When Odysseus returns and smells grilled meat, he knows it's over. Helios, furious, demands that Zeus punish these men. Zeus agrees. As soon as they set sail again, Zeus unleashes a terrible storm. Lightning strikes the ship, which breaks into pieces. All of Odysseus's companions die by drowning. Odysseus, alone, clings to debris and drifts for 9 days before washing up on Calypso's island, a nymph who will keep him for 7 years. Finally, after 10 years of wandering, after losing all his companions, Odysseus returns to Ithaca. But even there, the trials continue. His palace is overrun by suitors who want to marry Penelope and take his throne. With the help of his son Telemachus, Odysseus massacres them all and finally reunites with his wife. The Odyssey of Odysseus is more than a simple adventure story. It's the tale of a man who confronts monsters, gods, and above all, his own flaws. His pride before Polyphemus triggers the curse that ruins everything. His curiosity pushes him into unnecessary dangers, but his cunning, his intelligence, and his determination save him every time. Polyphemus the Cyclops, with his single eye and hunger for human flesh. Circe the Sorceress, capable of transforming men into beasts with a flick of her wand. The Sirens and their song that promises knowledge but brings death. Scylla and Charybdis, the impossible choice between 2 monsters. All these characters aren't just obstacles. They represent the temptations, dangers, and difficult choices we all face. And the final moral? Sometimes pride costs dearly. If Odysseus had remained humble, if he hadn't revealed his name to Polyphemus, he would have returned home in a few weeks. Instead, his hubris cost him 10 years and all his companions. But he learned, he survived, and he made it home. Because that's what being a hero is. It's not about being perfect, it's about continuing despite the mistakes. The Odyssey remains one of the greatest epics ever written, told nearly 3,000 years ago by Homer, and it continues to fascinate us today. Because deep down, we're all a bit like Odysseus, trying to get home, facing our own monsters along the way.